Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of The Murder Part. Tonight we'll be looking at the case of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Before we get into the analysis, I want to introduce my co-host. We'll start with Jeff. How you doing, Jeff?
Good. Happy to be here. My name is Jeff Pincin, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Delaware and Pennsylvania, and specialize in the treatment of OCD and other obsessive-compulsive disorders. And if I wasn't a counselor, guys, I would really want to have been a dark and light spirit assessor, right? So dark and light spirits. And I'm going to be the one who assesses them to figure out if a person's a dark or light spirit. All right, I think there's a pretty big need for that.
Yeah, how else can you tell the difference without an assessor?
Exactly. It's got to be a third party as far as I can tell.
Guess?
Assessment is a very important thing.
We know that as counselors. So I kind of got part of it, I guess, with the assessment. But nonetheless, I had to settle for counseling.
Yes. Well, such a disappointment.
It's a tough break.
Yeah, I appreciate the support.
All right, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Mike Smith. I am also a licensed professional counselor of mental health in the state of Delaware, focusing in narrative therapy and in geek therapy. And if I hadn't become a counselor, what I really had wanted to do as a kid was to become a cemetery sexton. Like I wanted to be the grave digger, the grave tender and everything. And I got my opportunity in my early 20s. I had an interview and I think I was just really animated in it because I was so excited because I could be, finally my dream of being a sexton. Mm-hmm. And apparently they thought there was something really weird about somebody being super excited to be a grave digger. And, they were like, sorry, we're not hiring you. And they kind of blackballed me from all the other cemeteries. So unfortunately, word got out. There's a creepy guy who's really excited about being a cemetery sexton. I was like,
And that would be the first creepy guy who's ever applied for that job in the history of the world.
Right, yeah, no other creepy guys have ever worked as a sexton, ever.
That's not any kind of stereotype or anything.
No, absolutely not. Nope. Yeah. I don't even know where we would get that idea.
Yeah. And I had to settle for being a counselor.
Oh. Sorry, Mike.
Rough break.
It's tough. Anyway.
All right. Well, on that bad news, we'll get into some of the history here of the two main people in this case. So this case, we talked before about other cases where sometimes I'm kind of perplexed why cases become popular and why some don't. Like the case of Michael Morton, I think, should have been much more well-known in society.
Yeah. I agree, too.
When looking at this particular case, though, there's really no doubt why this one became so popular.
Right.
It's like the most interesting elements of 5 popular cases jammed into one case. It's just the case that keeps on giving. It has everything in it.
It does. It has, of course, it has murders because it's the murder part. It also has zombies.
It's got zombies.
Wow. Zombies, the end of the world, the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, prepping for that.
Right.
An author that writes about end of days. It's got everything. And when it first came to light, like when people were first learning about this, there was so much intrigue, right? It was international. That not only why are the kids missing, for one thing? Because that's all we knew at first, right? We didn't know they hadn't found the bodies yet. But why are the kids missing? What happened to them? Who's involved? And then these details start coming out about past marriages and past husbands and wives that are now dead and kind of suspicious details about it. So every time we learn new details, it was like, wow, there's more stuff that we can learn about this and more information and more intrigue that happened and therefore more press about it. And the nice thing is that the East Idaho news, they just covered it so well, and they continue to.
That's all that channel does anymore.
Yeah, they have whole sections of the YouTube channel devoted to it, and it's impressive. It's great.
They're just going to rename the channel the Daybell Vallow channel or something like that.
And the guy Nate who covers all this stuff, he rose to fame because of how well he was covering it. So yeah, there was so much coverage, and because of the time we live in, of course, with the internet. That really helped things as well. If we just had newspapers, it might not have been the same thing. But videos are coming out and constant news coverage. Yeah, you're right. It just keeps on giving.
Right. Even like we're filming this episode tonight. There's actually 48 hours covering like new interviews with Chad Daybell's kids. Mm-hmm. Like we're kind of missing that to bring this to you, but we'll catch up on it, and we might give an update later. But it just there's constantly new stuff coming out.
Absolutely,
like, so much new stuff. And it's the story that there's trips to Hawaii, and as you said, Idaho. Like, if a story has Idaho, it has everything. Because there's nothing in Idaho. I'm going to get some backlash on that Idaho comment, but we're from Delaware. We don't get to make fun of many people.
No, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah, this case is, I think, too, certain cases when they become famous, everybody knows the backstory. Like when O.J. Simpson and all that, whatever he may or may not have done, everybody knew who he was. Mm-hmm. But with this case, nobody knew who these two were at any level, right? They're brand new alleged criminals on the scene. And that's not a big deal because we rarely know the backstory of a criminal when they're first reported in the news. But with this one, their history is so complex that I think a lot of people just strain to put all the pieces together, like just to get a clean timeline of who they were, because they had a whole history prior to getting together, which was noteworthy in and of itself. You didn't even need them to be together.
Yeah. Some people may have known Chad Daybell for his books that he written. Something maybe like 25, 30 books, if I remember correctly.
Self-published, I believe.
Self-published, yeah, and end of times kind of books. And so maybe people might have known him. I don't know how many people knew him from that, but he did speaking engagements. That's how Lori found out about him. So, but people who read those books may not have known that he had a backstory too. That there was more to him than just what he was writing about. So a lot of interesting details there.
I think he did have a devoted following. The people who did follow him were very devoted to following him. They really were into his books. But the fact that he made like $2,000 a year off his writing does not bode well for his career as a writer.
Yeah, I don't know if he
30 books or so, and you only make $2,000 a year.
I don't know if he ever approached a traditional publisher, but I would really like to see that meeting if it was recorded. Now, they wouldn't even entertain him for a moment, but if they had, I think he would have had some pretty harsh criticism on his content there. Yeah, it was a small, loyal audience, very compact audience. Mm-hmm. So before I get into the history here, I think it's important to declare an acronym so we can, for expedience sake, so there's a church called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that's their official name. Right. That's the name they like to use, the whole name each time. It's a long name. So I'm going to go with LDS, just so we can finish the podcast this year. And it's important to note that many people who are in LDS do not believe what Chad Daybell and maybe ultimately Lori Vallow ended up believing. Right.
Yeah. They are actually, I think it's the majority of people don't believe what they believed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the vast majority. It was a very small audience that was really attracted to this message. And this type of kind of apocalyptic stuff is popular in other religions too. Every religion, actually, just about has this subgroup.
As far as I know, Lori started believing in things that would be associated with what she called Church of the Firstborn. Now, I don't know how many people belong to this sect or this section of beliefs or whatever, but as far as I know, that was Lori and probably Chad as well.
That one's a new one on me.
Well, you know what? There's so many details here. And like you said, Mike, that there's more coming out even right now as we're speaking, that to conceptualize all of this, I had to outline every person. As a new person became involved, as I was reading about this, I had to outline every person. And that took up like a whole page of my notes. Just people that were involved that had some kind of part to play in this. There's so much to it.
It's like learning about the mafia, where you pull one thread and there's a whole nother story that's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So it's hard to jump into like talking about the mafia without really understanding all the different crime families and their histories. They accomplished that with just two people.
Okay, right. You got to start with Lucky Luciano and Ross. We're not going to talk about those guys.
Well, it's a good thing we have a board back here with all kind of connected parts. Maybe that can help us sort it all out.
Yeah, we would need all three panels.
All of them.
Yeah. And even more novelty oversized thumbtacks, which are one of my favorite things in the world. These
weapons.
Dangerous.
Dangerous weapons.
Who would buy these? Well, I guess
we did.
You did. I guess we did. I guess that answers the question.
They were just waiting for us.
I don't know if they have any other usage outside of what we're doing. I guess. I mean, maybe if you're holding up something really heavy, I don't know.
Or holding up a convenience store, maybe?
Yeah, it's an armed robbery. All right. So we see here, it's a tale of two lives, two stories that intertwined. Apparently, in marriage 7 different times throughout history.
Impressive.
Yeah. So we're just covering the last time. Just a disclaimer: we're not getting into the other 6 times. I'm sure books will be coming out about that.
What I think is one of the most interesting things about this is like almost all of the super interesting craziness that in this case took place almost exclusively in 2019.
They stayed busy in that year.
It was like from the beginning of 2019 to the end was just it was all of this stuff was happening.
Right.
So let's go back to 1968. Our story starts with Chad Daybell being born in Utah. He married a woman named Tammy in 1992. They had 5 children, and I believe some of those children are on that 48-hour special that were...
5 of them.
5 of them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They all showed up.
With the same story, too. Like that they all believe the same thing. They all believe... Now we haven't seen it, right? It's airing literally as we're recording this, but our understanding so far is that all of the kids believe that Chad was set up for this, and as far as we know, again, that they believe that Chad was set up by people we'll talk about, but Lori and her brother Alex. So as far as we know, that's what their story is, according to them, about their dad.
Yeah, we saw the preview for that. It was just a 3-minute preview, and who knows how good a summary it was, but they really did seem to be pro Chad Daybell in there. So a little bit surprised, but we'll talk about kind of the different theories around that. So after Chad graduated from college, he started self-publishing these books about the apocalypse that are related to LDS. We'll talk more about it get into their beliefs, but very small audience for those books. 25, right? A lot of books. In 2015, Chad and his wife Tammy moved to Idaho after Chad heard a voice commanding him to do so. No story ever ends well when it starts with, a voice commanded me to do something.
Yeah. What's really interesting about that too, though, is that one of the fans of his books mentioned Rexburg as being a safe haven during the apocalypse. Or Rexburg will be a safe haven because it's out in the middle of nowhere. It'll be fine. It'll be a good place. And then shortly after, Chad heard the voice that said, "Go to Rexburg,"
confirming what he'd heard in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
But he did do his writing, but again, he only made $2,000 a year, so he had to make ends meet. And he actually, lucky duck, got a job as a cemetery sexton.
He was living the dream.
He was
digging graves. I mean, what else would anybody want?
Right.
Oof. Yeah.
It hits my heartstrings on episodes like this.
Some people really do have all the luck. So now going back to 1973, this was 5 years after Chad Daybell was born. A woman named Lori Vallow was born in California. Now, she has a whole complex history. She was married a number of times. During her 3rd marriage, she had a daughter named Tylee.
Technically, it was Lori Cox when she was born.
Right.
Vallow would be one of the men she married later.
Yeah.
It was a very important one for her whole story. But yeah, she would then have several other marriages.
Yeah, she was certainly staying active in the marriage arena. Her 4th marriage was to a man named Charles Vallow, and they adopted a son named Joshua, who they refer as JJ. So far we have Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow. They're not together yet in this timeline. And we see with Lori, Tylee and JJ.
Mm-hmm. Right. Lori did have one other child named Colby.
Oh, that's right. From the 2nd marriage.
Yeah, from her 2nd marriage. Her 1st marriage was kind of like right out of high school. And I think she tried to get it annulled instead of divorced, like within the year. It was a very rapid, quick turnover on that one. And then she married someone else, and she had Colby from that marriage. And then that one ended in divorce. And she had husband number 3. Who I think she had who she had Tylee with.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then later, those two would divorce.
He was actually accused of abusing their children, or Tylee, I don't know about Colby, but accused of abuse of children that would be supported by in-laws. So there's part of the history, right? There's already some issues. Not only is that the 3rd marriage, but there's also some abuse allegations.
Yeah, so a lot of moving parts. She's had, at this point, an adventurous life, a lot of different romantic partners. So we see here that while she was married to Charles Vallow, number 4, husband number 4,
We're on number 4 now.
she started reading books that Chad Daybell was self-publishing. So those two now connect via that mechanism. She became obsessed with the books. She told Charles that she was no longer interested in being married, which somehow shouldn't be a surprise after that many marriages. Although sometimes, I think statistically, we have a better chance of staying married number 4, but it's usually because you run out of lifespan. Right? That's because every marriage, your chances increase of being divorced as you move 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. But 4 is strange because you might be 70 or 80 by that time.
Yeah. Not Lori, though.
No, she kept it moving.
She did keep it moving very quick.
Yeah.
Rapid turnover. Now Joshua was actually, this one was weird to me. Like they didn't just find a kid to adopt, right? Like, they didn't go through an adoption agency or anything. This was the grandson of Charles Vallow's sister. And he had some developmental issues when he was born, and his mother wasn't going to be able to take care of him. So, and the Kay, I think it's Kay, is the grandmother. Mm-hmm. She and her husband couldn't take care of him either. So Lori and Charles took him in, and eventually they decided to just fully adopt him as their own child.
Mike, I'm glad that you tackled that, like, how they know JJ kind of thing, because I swear that I like just thought about it for a solid 10 minutes, could not wrap my mind around it, and realized, no, I'm not even going to mention it. So I'm glad you did, because I like still don't really understand like the connection there and how that all works.
Yeah,
it's a relative.
It's a relative. That was my conclusion. Somehow they knew him, they adopted him. Period. Moving on.
Yeah, it was Charles' grandnephew. They adopted.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, complexity and difficulty running a comb through the timeline of this mess, just so many moving parts. So Lori starts reading those books. She talks to Charles, breaks the bad news to him. She also mentioned one other thing in that moment, which Charles found curious. She was a deity who was preparing for the second coming.
Yeah.
Aren't we all, though?
Well, I don't know about you, but I am.
I mean, I did want to be able to tell the light from dark spirits, so that I'm kind of up there, right?
You're in the club.
I mean, I'm in the club. There you go.
Yeah, so she also threatened to kill him. So it was a lot of bad news coming once.
She did threaten to kill him. She also, the one most interesting things that she said to him at that time was, I want to kill you because you're not actually Charles. You're a zombie named Nathan something. And because you're a zombie, I could shoot you and no one would care.
I believe there was a biblical thing she referenced in there as well. I actually might be getting the husbands wrong on that one. But there was a biblical reference that Lori made at some point that she could kill a husband. I think it was Charles. I might be getting it wrong, but could kill a husband because some scripture verse said something and she was taking it and applying it to that. So yeah, she's really coming at it from all angles.
Yeah, but she's a deity, so she can get away with whatever she wants, right?
That's a fair point.
And she's visited other galaxies and other realities, and this is just the one she's on now.
Right. That's a fair point. Charles was also making, he's a managing partner, financial investment firm. He was making $20,000 a month. And apparently Charles really liked to live that lavish lifestyle, but I don't think Lori was really into that. But people would describe her as really loving her kids and really loving being a mom, things like that. So it was very different from the kind of cold person that appears to be very cold-hearted that we would see on news reports and things.
And aloof.
Yeah. Like
when you see her in court wearing the orange stripe thing, orange and white, and looks like a lot of makeup.
A lot of makeup.
Yeah. Just looks aloof and disconnected from what's going on. Like doesn't seem to understand the proceedings, or at least is not showing us that she does. Pretty interesting. So Charles received a lot of disappointing news. His wife was a deity. He was a zombie. And he's a zombie that likes that nice lifestyle, that's unusual among zombies.
It is. It really is. Like most zombies just kind of like the roll around kind of lifestyle.
Brains.
Eating brains. You can eat that?
But he could afford the brains. That's the difference, right? He's the upper echelon of zombies. So he could afford like the gourmet brains, I guess, right? He could afford like the best zombie lifestyle.
There's actually a TV show called iZombie that actually would be a great reference for this, because the zombies actually were thinking kind of people. It was actually a really interesting crime drama comedy show on CW for a while.
Well, that's cool.
It was good.
Yeah, so, you have a whole different echelon of zombie. Now, at this point, Charles survived. He's still alive at this point. His fortunes don't work out as well in the future. But so he went to a house that Lori rented on July 11, 2019 to pick up JJ. That never happened because Lori's brother shot him to death.
Yep. Shot and killed him.
And he said it was self-defense. And interestingly, he died later on as well.
He died later on in 2019.
Yeah. There's a lot of dying going on.
So Alex would say that Charles attacked him with a baseball bat. Now, it's interesting to note that Charles had played baseball his whole life, or the majority of his life anyway. He was really good at baseball. And so when you watch the video of the police video, the body cam footage of Alex, he's holding his head, he's, oh, that hurt, whatever. But they would say that there wasn't really any mark, right? There wasn't really anything that they could see, that the police could see, that really indicated that he had gotten hit, or at least not very hard. But he was coherent. Alex was. He was, fine. He was going on about his business. And so the family members would say, wait a minute, Charles was really good at baseball, right? He knew how to swing a bat really hard. If he wanted to hurt someone with a bat, he would have hurt them, right? And so it didn't line up for family members or friends that knew the people. And so that's what leads some people to believe, well, I'm not really sure that it was self-defense, because it doesn't line up in my mind based on what we knew about Charles.
Right. The other thing that really didn't mesh with that was Alex's description of what happened. Apparently there was an argument that started between Lori and Charles that kind of escalated till Charles was yelling and screaming. Tylee was the one who came into the room reportedly with the baseball bat and tried to swing at Charles, who just yanked it out of her hands. Lori and Tylee kind of beat feet out of the house at that point with JJ. And to keep Charles from following them, Alex stood in his way, right? And then, Charles swung at him, hit him in the head. And then instead of leaving after Lori and Tylee, he goes further into the house back to his bedroom. And this is what he tells the police. He's like, I went to my bedroom and I retrieved my gun, and he kept coming at me, and I told him to stop or I'll shoot you. And he raised the bat up again, so I shot him. That to me doesn't strike as self-defense very much. I mean, I can understand if I can't get to the front door, let me go to the room. But once you're in the room, you can close the door. And I can also understand trying to protect loved ones. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But also, why didn't you go out with them?
Yeah, well, there's really it was one of those kind of no evidence situations. I mean, you have a person who's dead, you have another person who said this is what happened, but there was no video, no credible witnesses. You're just kind of, the police didn't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. Now, there was body cam footage taken from the police of Lori right after that happened, which she seems really relaxed and having a good time. She's laughing, smiling, not like her husband had just been shot and killed. I guess he was in the process of divorcing at that point, or whatever, right? Or divorced.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. But Tylee was there too, and she seemed kind of calm, which I thought was kind of odd as well.
Yeah, I think she seemed calm, but she didn't seem quite as happy-go-lucky as
no, she wasn't
as
Lori.
But, being calm in that situation, that could have been something kind of coached or rehearsed over years. There was initially, before Charles had died, he had gone to collect the kids, and Lori had taken them to a hotel, and when he went into the house, stuff was gone, and he called the police then to make a report about that. I think that's when he told the police that like she was telling him that he was a zombie and things like that. But during that, right after that, the police brought her in to talk to her, and that's where she kind of laid down, oh, Charles is abusive. And we've gotten into it, and we've had to leave the house on several different occasions about this. And Tylee was there too, and she said like 2 or 3 times, like she's very kind of subdued about it, but she did agree with Lori about, 2 or 3 times we've had to do that. And I think that's another reason why like there wasn't anything really going further with that investigation. And the other reason is Alex would die several months later.
Yeah, and I can understand why the police would think that if a homicide occurred, he did it without necessarily anyone else involved. So if he was dead, then there was really no sense in investigating any further. Well, things changed later, but at that point, they're like, well, he's dead. So,
right.
Now, there was some other information that that I only saw one place, but had to do with allegations against Charles from his prior marriages, and an ex-wife accusing him of being an alcoholic, an abuser of her kids and their kids that they had together. Charles denied it, but charges had been pressed against him, and I was able to see some police documents from that. So another thing they added in there, and I don't know if this is true, but it would kind of make sense. He had $1 million life insurance policy. Lori was the beneficiary for that, but as their marriage started to decline, like saying, you're a zombie, I'm going to kill you, that usually puts a damper on marriages, usually. He had switched the beneficiary.
Depends on the marriage.
What's that?
So it depends on the marriage.
Yeah, fair enough. He had switched the beneficiary to his sister Kay shortly before he got murdered. But Lori wasn't aware that he had done this. Now, we've talked before about people killing other people potentially for insurance money, or maybe that being a possible motive for them. So that comes into play here. Was that a potential motive for this? What if it wasn't in self-defense? Was this some kind of plan they had in place that let's get him riled up and then kill him and we get the insurance money? Who knows? But it's that has come into play in this.
I've never bought that.
I hear you, but
I've never bought that.
It doesn't mean nobody ever thinks about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, she didn't know the policy was changed.
Right.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. Now, I think maybe what it did was it freed her to move with JJ and Tylee, which she did right after the death. It was a homicide or whatever it was, the death of Vallow. She moved to Rexburg, Idaho, of all places. Now, of course, this is where Chad Daybell lived, but Chad was still married at that time. So, a little awkward. Then we move to October 19, 2019. We see that Chad's wife, Tammy, was found dead, and Chad was allowed to tell the coroner or whoever, you can't do an autopsy. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, you're the boss, you run the show. Yeah.
In some counties and states, that is the law. Like that, if there's no obvious sign of foul play, there's not a knife sticking out of a chest or an obvious bullet wound, family is allowed to say, no, don't do an autopsy.
Yeah, well, she was only, I think, 48 or something like that. She
49, I think.
49, yeah. She was, I mean, she was at an age where a sudden death, I would think, would always be investigated. Like that's...
Which they eventually did do an autopsy. My understanding is the results have not been
released. Have not been released to the public. They were released to the county prosecutor's office of where Rexburg is. I don't remember the county name, but they were, and the prosecutor said that they are going to be handling what's moving forward with that. So there's something moving forward with that.
That's all we know.
Yeah.
Now, so here's another one where insurance money comes in. Chad received $430,000 life insurance payout. A month before that, he had co-signed an application to increase the life insurance amount. So, I mean, I hear you, Mike, that like not totally believable all the time, but it doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, there have been many actually famous killers who have done that, who have killed for insurance. Particularly, we see it in poison killings, with women killing husbands. Insurance money is a very popular motive. Now, there aren't many of those as compared to men killing wives or anyone else, but insurance can be a motive. It can certainly be.
I mean, I've never actually heard a case where somebody who was accused of killing someone for the insurance money was like, "Yeah, that's why I did it." It's just that they tend to be convicted of it, especially in the poison situations. But there tends to be more of a reason behind it. In this particular case, like the insurance money may have been a factor of, okay, well, this is something I can get out of doing this, but I don't think it was necessarily like, oh, I'm going to get this money. It was, oh, I met this woman. I want to be with this woman, so I'll take care of my wife. Well, if I'm doing that anyway, I might as well.
It's a side benefit.
It's a side benefit. Yeah. But like people like H.H. Holmes was, in the 1860s or 1870s, would have been doing that. But he could get random people to sign life insurance, papers checking into a hotel he built. And he gets the $2,000 payout when they die and they go missing. He's not related to them at all, but he just got them to sign it, and there was no investigations. Mm-hmm. The insurance company was like, okay, here you go. Here's your money. That's not the case anymore.
Well, regardless of how strong a motive it is, the police certainly put a lot of weight on it.
Yeah.
So if you end up in a relationship with someone who happens to die, if you fiddled with the insurance documents in the prior 10 years, you're going to prison.
I don't know. I think if you're the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, you're going to prison.
Right. Yeah, well, but especially if you were seen changing something. Interestingly, in some of the cases I reviewed, the person who was accused of the murder wasn't even the one who made the change or wanted the change. Mm-hmm. And the prosecutor's like, nope, must be telepathy. You somehow communicate. Like they
upped it from 300,000 to $1 million. Yeah, 5 years ago, right? And my wife did that.
Well, that wasn't even the state. It doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's probably considered by prosecutors and police much more powerful than it is, but it's something. I mean, it's a motive, and motive is a challenge sometimes with homicides. So surprisingly, a lot of them, it's not necessarily clear why somebody did it.
Yeah. Sometimes there is no real clear reason. It could be a confluence of reasons, 5, 10, 15 different reasons, that each one of them by themselves is nothing, but then put them all together and you have a major thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that they come together with impulsivity, maybe rage, other factors, alcohol. Convinced alcohol is a big part of it. So we see that, interestingly, so October 19, again, Tammy's found dead. On October 2, 17 days before, Lori purchased a wedding ring. So love was in the air.
Yeah.
Wonder who the lucky guy was going to be.
She used Charles Vallow's account on Amazon to do it, too. $36. The ring was $36.
Right, which, of course, this was after
Charles was dead.
Charles was dead, using his account, buying a ring she would later wear in wedding pictures, being married to Chad.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Chad Daybell. They had flown to Hawaii and married on November 5, 2019. So we see here that relatives start looking for Tylee and JJ around the time of the marriage, because notably absent was them.
Mm-hmm. So they go to Hawaii, Chad and Lori, no kids, right? No kids on the flight there, no kids on the flight back.
Yeah, seems like they maybe forgot something, and people were concerned.
Tylee hadn't been seen since September 8th. Mm-hmm.
The pictures of them in Yellowstone Park.
Yeah. They went to Yellowstone Park. There are several pictures. And then nobody saw her after that.
Now, interesting thing on that, Mike and I were talking about this before we started recording. Alex's phone, now Alex Cox, that's Lori's brother, was tracked to have been at Lori and Chad's house the next day after this last time that Tylee was seen. And that morning that Alex that his phone at least was tracked to their house, Chad sends a message to Tammy saying that he shot a raccoon and had to burn the limbs before the rain came and had to bury the raccoon in the pet cemetery. Now, later on when they did, search the property, never found a raccoon. And he talked about a fence that it was near. And all these details we would kind of later learn seemed kind of eerily similar to where things were found later on. So that text was it was odd at the very least, right? And of course Tammy would die shortly after that. That would be 2 months or a month after. September, October, yeah, a month after. So I don't know, just weird.
There was also a weird attempt on Tammy's life that occurred prior to her mysteriously dying.
Yeah.
Maybe an attempt. Somebody had what appeared to be a paintball gun and attacked her.
Wearing a ski mask, came up behind her, pulled the trigger on the gun a couple of times, but apparently it wasn't loaded.
Yeah, I guess if it was, she would have been hit with a paintball. I'm not sure what they were trying to achieve with that. Was that a homicide attempt? I mean, usually you use something lethal. It's pretty hard to kill somebody with a paintball gun. I guess it's possible, right? But
well, speaking of attempted shootings, there's another person that we haven't talked about yet, Brandon Boudreaux. Now, Brandon Boudreaux, let me check my list of people. That's Lori's niece's ex-husband.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's in Idaho with them. And let me go back to it. So he's in Idaho with them. And so this is early September 2019. He's driving home, and he claims that Alex Cox, Lori's brother, shoots at his car and misses him by like inches, right? So I think it hits the top of the door, the driver's side door or something like that. He identified a red Jeep where he sees a gun coming out of the back. So like the back window opens, sees a gun coming out of the back. The red Jeep, he says, belonged to Charles Vallow, who's dead at this point. And he says that it was Alex that was the shooter. So there's this pattern, maybe, of people trying to shoot other people, not being successful all the time, but trying to shoot other people. And if it was truly Alex Cox, then he's keeping busy with shooting people, right? Whether self-defense or not. But if it really was him, he's staying busy with that.
And what's interesting about that particular one was that there are reports from many people that Lori's niece was actually part of the whole end of days, the 144,000 like almost cult that Daybell was trying to build. And Daybell would tell people all the time that they were that they'd met in past lives. He'd tell women that they had been married in past lives. And I think you mentioned it earlier that he told Lori that they had been married 7 times in past lives.
that was his pickup line.
And kind of his pickup line. And she bought that one. She loved that idea. But she's the niece has denied that. Her beliefs are very much LDS, and doesn't deviate from that. But I have a feeling she kind of dabbled there a little bit. But then when the divorce was happening, like there were some issues there. I think that's why he was targeted.
Yeah. Is that... I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mike. I just wanted to go off of what you said, Dr. Grande. When you search for end of times or post-apocalyptic pickup lines, is that really the first one that comes up? Have I been married to you before in another life? Is that what comes up first? I'd be interested to see the list of them.
That is a great end of days pickup line.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
No, I was just going to go back to the raccoon thing.
Yeah.
What I think was interesting is I was watching a bit of the testimony at the Daybell hearing to see if there was enough evidence to hold him over for trial, and they were talking about that text message. Yeah. And the guy said, he's like, well, if he had been out there shooting large animals, and my first thought was like, do you know what a large animal is?
Do you know what a raccoon looks
like? A raccoon is not a large animal. A raccoon is a pretty small animal. Like it's bigger than a rat. Certainly, it's bigger than some breeds of small dogs, but it's not a large animal. Right?
I picture like a moose walking on his property.
Right. A moose is a large animal. Like I would even go so far as to say something like a German Shepherd is a large animal.
Sure,
but you don't get raccoons the size of German Shepherds, even in Idaho. I don't think.
Maybe it's an Idaho thing.
It might be an Idaho thing. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that struck me. Like, really? Do you know what a raccoon is? You know what a large animal is?
So were they making the point that somebody would have seen him or something, or
I think
known about it?
I think it was just pointing out how odd it is how coincidental it is for him to have been shooting a large animal and then trying to burn it and burying it on the same day that they believe Tylee was burned and buried, because that is what they believe happened. They tried to burn her that somebody tried to burn her body in a fire pit and then buried her in a shallow grave not far away from it.
Yeah. So when Chad and Lori were in Ohio, the police asked Lori, like, where are the kids? It seems like a fair question.
I think so.
Pretty reasonable. And she was arrested for felony desertion, right? Because she wasn't saying anything.
She was not. She didn't say a word.
That was February 2020. Chad was arrested in June of 2020 after the remains of Tylee and JJ were found on his property, I guess in his backyard or somewhere that you can almost see from his house, but not quite, or something. He was charged with felony concealment of evidence. So it's pretty clear they believe he hid the bodies at least. Right? In 2021, in May, we see additional charges, including first-degree murder, grand theft by deception, and conspiracy. So now they're looking at the full freight, right? So they're facing murder, hiding the bodies, everything, and conspiring. So really, they're facing. I don't know if Idaho has the death penalty, but they're certainly facing life in prison.
As of right now, when we're recording this, Lori they've continued to deem her not competent,
not fit to stand trial,
not competent. Yeah, and they delayed the trial for that reason. So I don't know if they expect that to change, or if they're going to do something different with this.
I mean, given that the judge said that they could be tried together, Chad Daybell's lawyers tried to get their case separated so they could be tried separately, but the judge was like, no, you together. They wanted to keep it together.
Yeah. From what I understand, Idaho is not a state that has a lot of activity with true crime. It's a small jurisdiction relative to people, even though it's a large state. But my understanding is that, like many states, the not competent to stand trial is just lip service. It's just something to satisfy concerned citizens for a time that somebody with a mental illness isn't being run through the system. But if she has to be reevaluated, I think every 6 months or something, and I would guess that the next time or time after she'll be found acceptable. It's what happens in many, many cases like this. So, I guess the hope is it avoids an appeal, maybe later on. Like if she's found guilty, they can say, well, we said she wasn't competent and we did all this assessment. I'm not sure it means anything, but they're almost certainly going to be tried for all these charges. I don't know about convicted. We'll see. Yeah. But
I have my doubts on conviction. Although I've seen other cases where I'm like, there's no evidence of that. Oh gosh, they're convicted. Scott Peterson, and again, I think Scott Peterson did it, but I don't think there was enough evidence to get him at trial. But they convicted him. I don't think there's enough evidence in this particular case, especially since there's a suspect that they can easily point to and say, he did it. It's Jeff.
I did it.
Jeff did
it. Was me. I didn't even know it was me.
Right?
Wow.
You had no idea that you went to Idaho.
There's more news in this case, even right now. This is crazy.
No, it's Alex Cox. They can point to Alex Cox and say, see all these erratic things. He killed Charles Vallow. He tried to kill Brandon. They tracked his cell phone out to the Vallow place. We have no reason to believe that Charles or Lori was involved in it at all. And that's going to be the defense.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how that works for him. I was looking at a case not long ago of David Cam, which I think would be a good case to bring on the show. We have a long list of good cases on the show, but he was convicted based on so-called blood spatter, high-velocity blood spatter. Now, the whole science of blood spatter, as you said many times, Mike, is baloney. And it really is. I mean, blood stains are real. If there's blood, you can stain clothing. But the idea that you can tell how it got on there, very shaky. He was convicted for 8 little spots of blood spatter, even though he had an alibi confirmed by 11 other people. He was playing basketball with 11 people, and they all said no, he was there the whole time.
Wow.
And the prosecution didn't say, no, he committed the murders before or after the basketball. They said right in the middle of him playing basketball. He snuck out, killed his family, his wife and 2 kids, and came back, and no one noticed.
Wow.
11 people who all testified. They're like, no, look, we're telling you. He was there the whole time. He was found guilty twice, 2 separate trials, found guilty, and then the third trial, was overturned. But yeah, so that was just one piece of evidence. That was the blood spatter on his shirt, which he got on there. The blood stain got on there because he tried to resuscitate one of his kids. He came upon the crime scene after somebody came in, a burglar, and he tried to resuscitate him. It was just transfer. But that was the only thing. That transfer was the only evidence, period.
Wow.
Right.
That was it. Now, he also had a long history of affairs, so I guess that, yeah. But that wasn't even...
As soon as when we start getting into that, oh, you had an affair? He must have done it.
But for the second trial, the affairs weren't allowed in. Yeah, so the jury's like, well, let's see. He absolutely wasn't there, but, I'm really bothered by that high-velocity impact spatter. What's something else, another reason I think that case would be good is the spatter guy, the expert.
Right? Dexter?
yeah. Well, he wasn't as good as Dexter. Dexter would have been better. He said he was working on a degree, PhD in fluid dynamics. He said he had consulted on hundreds of cases. Turns out he didn't do any of that. This was his first case, period, and he declared that it was high velocity impact spatter.
I mean, there's a pattern there. Every time we mention these experts, and like they're the reason why these people were convicted, and maybe not every, but it seems like most of the time it comes out, wait a minute, you didn't actually do these things. You're not actually the expert you claim to be, or you've never actually went to school, or it's not even your real name, or whatever it is. It seems to be just something that's just totally off about them. I don't know why that trend happens so often.
Well, why would you lie about that? Like, I mean, and I don't know if perjury charges ever came down, but
because you get paid.
Well, I think some of it's like arrogance, right? Like you're being you're on direct or cross examination, and you want to show that you know what you're doing. You speak with authority. We see that in the the Michael Peterson case. So same thing. It was an expert with blood spatter. That was the staircase murders, which is another incredible case. We saw something similar where it was a fake expert or an expert who misrepresented the evidence. So yeah, I mean, can you imagine like one piece of evidence? So that's the bar, like for being convicted, just one thing. And really, I'm convinced that a jury would convict with nothing. I'm convinced that's going to happen at some day. It's like the prosecutor could say, you know what, we did this whole grand jury thing, but there's really no reason to believe he did it. Guilty. If he's sitting there,
he's sitting over at the defendant's table. He's guilty.
He looks guilty. Maybe that'll be it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure that has played a role. Some people, like they come in, they sit down in the jury box, and there's somebody sitting at the table that's the defendant. Like, well, he must be guilty. He's sitting right here. Because there is a sense that many people have, the law-abiding citizens have, that the police don't arrest you unless you're guilty. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting to this point at trial, you must be guilty because the police don't arrest you unless they have evidence. Mm-hmm. That's not true.
Yeah.
Police arrest you at the drop of a hat. Like you could be walking down the street and drop your hat, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to arrest you." And there are certain communities of people in the United States who very, very much understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and there's also been cases where the police have arrested 2 people knowing that one had to be innocent to get them both in custody. It's just they take liberties with the law.
Yeah,
right.
And the police are allowed to lie to you. They don't have to tell you that they're police. They get away with anything. Yeah,
they're professional liars in one sense. And I don't mean that they're necessarily bad people, but they are trained in deception. Mm-hmm. And we said it many times. They're not your friends. Mm-hmm. Like as a citizen, the police are on the opposite side. They have the full weight of the government and full monetary resources of the government. So always ask for a lawyer.
Yeah, always ask for a lawyer.
All right. So we see here, let's take a look at some of the beliefs. I mentioned the LDS. We talked about some of the beliefs. I think that really sets the context for this case and may explain the allegations. I don't know. But it might give some sense of kind of why they had this sense of urgency to allegedly wipe out all these people. Like they just, again, there's like a lot of shooting, a lot of killing going on.
Yeah.
Seems like there should be a reason for this. So Chad wrote these books about the apocalypse. We talked about that, LDS. It appears as though Lori kind of bought into his belief system and appointed herself, or maybe somebody else did, as a deity. Right? So the world was going to get a lot smaller. That's her basic premise, right? Like she's a leader. Everybody but these 144,000 are going to get wiped out, or whatever happens to them. It's not a good time for them.
Yeah.
And she was going to be exalted, and I guess maybe Chad was in there as well.
I think Chad was on his way to being the cult leader. Like Lori was it was going to be a kind of a dual role, right? Like Chad's the leader, and the grand husband, I think, because he kept using that pickup line. We were married in a previous life. Right? I kept using that to try and bring people in. And they said their grand goal was to try and find the 144,000. Those would be the people spared from during the rapture. I think they would be spared from, like, they wouldn't be the ones taken up to heaven, but they would be spared in peace and in safety, while everyone else was subject to, like, burning as the world burned.
Yeah.
So they were looking for those 144,000.
Amazingly, you could get in that group simply by buying one of Chad's books.
Now that's convenient.
Yeah, and if you liked it, you were guaranteed a spot on whatever was supposed to happen.
Yeah, well, I don't think he sold a total of 144,000 copies. So
there's still
collecting
some room.
people for the apocalypse if you want to buy a copy.
So they would release not a lot, but they would release emails that email exchanges between Chad and Lori, and there was a lot of talk about the end times and about the analysis of light and dark spirits. That could have been me, but all right,
you could have been.
It was Chad and Lori. I'll give it to them. So analysis of who had a dark spirit, who had a light spirit, and my understanding anyway, the light spirit people, those would be among the 144,000, or those would be the people that were in the good category, so to speak. And so Lori was a good spirit, or light spirit. JJ and Tylee, dark spirits. Chad, I assume, was a light spirit. And they had this, I remember seeing there's some chart about how they came to these conclusions and things like that. But it seemed like Chad was the one that would be able to tell. He was the one that would figure out who has a light, who has a dark spirit. And there was a lot of, there's a lot of back and forth. And Lori calling the kids zombies and saying that they I think at some point she even said, see if I can find it, but even saying that, so they'd become zombies, the kids had become zombies, evil spirits had entered their bodies, they become dark, and the only way to get rid of the spirits was to pray them out or kill them.
Yeah, with spiritual weapons. They were actually demonic zombies.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the interesting thing I thought of from the zombies. It's not a traditional zombie. Like
this is a demon zombie.
In the movies, you see, like, your zombies they're the living undead. They've died, and then the body comes back with just kind of like instinct to feed, to eat.
They're like reanimated through some electrolytes or
something or other. Or some of them like 28 Days Later. Which is not a sequel to 28 Days, by the way. If you're 28 Days, Sandra Bullock movie about rehab, 28 Days Later, zombie movie. Mm-hmm. Could be a sequel, I suppose.
Yeah, but, there's an overlap there.
But 28 Days Later is a virus that caused people to just go crazy and start trying to cannibalize everybody around them. But in Lori and Chad's belief, you were a zombie when your soul died. It was attacked by a demon, and the soul would be killed, and your body would just be there without a soul, and then the demon could take over, or some other dark ghost spirit could come in. That's why she said that her husband Charles Vallow, like, you're not really Charles, you're Nathan Schneider or something like that. Like she threw a name on him that wasn't like a typical demonic name, right? right? Like not Beelzebub or anything like that. It wasn't even like Schalach the murderizer. Like it was you're Nathan Schneider. What? He's a demon in like the accounting portion of hell or something? Nathan
with a name like that.
Right. But that was a very interesting take on it to me. Like was the whole like this is why you're a zombie and not just like possessed. Because like possession has an internal logic, right? Possession is like you're still you still have a soul, but the demon is in there with you.
Right? In the body.
In the body.
Fighting for the same real estate.
Right.
So there's hope.
Right. So there's hope for that. But in the case of the zombies that she was seeing and she was pointing to, it was they aren't the person anymore. The soul, the thing that makes it. So in her mind, if alleged, this is all alleged right now, if she had something to do with the death of Tylee and JJ, it would have been, it's not Tylee and JJ. That's what would have been her belief. Mm-hmm. It's not Tylee and JJ. It's just a husk. Killing the husk is a mercy.
Yeah, they're already gone.
They were already gone
from her estimation. Beyond, no longer in the 144 Club. They didn't purchase the book.
Right.
Is what happened, it sounds like.
I think it's interesting. She started trying to give that book to people. Like when she was living in Hawaii and when they just moved back into the continental United States and moved to Arizona, she was just giving the books out.
You're chosen.
Like, you got to read this. Read this book, then buy the rest of them. Read this book. This is before she ever met Daybell.
Well, what's interesting is in support of all of that, there was an interview with a cellmate who spent 4 days with Lori. And she reported that Lori was always upbeat, never showed heartbreak, was always friendly, never cried, glad to no longer be incarcerated in Hawaii due to roaches being in that facility. Lori was worried about how she would look during her first court hearing due to dry skin. So, that would be everyone's concern, right? Your kids are dead and you're worried about
the
dry
primary
skin.
concern, I would say.
I would
absolutely.
Think, yeah. I'd be worried about combination skin if I was getting to be in court on camera.
Absolutely. She liked all the national attention she was receiving, according to this cellmate. She was constantly talking to Chad or her son Colby. I don't know how often she'd be able to get phone calls, but now they also said there was video calls that were happening because Lori would always try to look her best during these video calls between her and Chad. Again, no mention of the kids. Kids are dead, and she's just trying to look good for Chad. But she would talk to Colby, her son Colby, a lot. We mentioned from a previous marriage. Colby would constantly be asking where JJ and Tylee are, but Lori would never discuss the kids. She would bring up memories, talk about Colby, and Colby would get frustrated. But she kept saying, "Colby, just listen. Everyone wants to know, but it's none of their business. God doesn't judge me. They shouldn't judge me. And the prophet says to stay off social media, so don't go on there." So it's telling Colby, don't go on social media, right? So don't see all this stuff, essentially. And the cellmate would say that phone calls between Lori and Chad were nauseating. So it's just kind of this very, as far as I remember, the cellmate would describe them as these real, like, I don't know, kind of lovey kind of thing. Sugary, sure, mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, no mention of the kids, but let me just look good for Chad. Let me act good towards him, things like that. And so it was a weird interaction. It was kind of tough to watch that interview with the former cellmate because it's like, wait a minute, what is going on here? Are you thinking about the kids at all? Are they ever on your mind? It was a weird thing to watch.
Yeah, their relationship, they prioritized, it would appear, their romantic relationship and their role as leaders in the apocalypse or whatever they were doing. And I guess the kind of nauseating lovey-dovey talk was a way just to annihilate. Oh.
Flash flood warning.
Yeah, that went completely over the do not disturb. It's like, no, you need to know this.
Yeah. It's really important.
Oh, crap, who was it?
So they were very interested. They emphasized their relationship a lot. And the nauseating lovey-dovey talk might have been their way of wiping out people. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's a very deadly form of communication. And I'm guessing that the cellmate was somewhat trapped, right? So it seems like a cruel and unusual punishment. She might have a case there to, as far as that. So Lori had this belief that she was an immortal, and we talked about the previous marriages with Chad in former lives over, I guess, hundreds or thousands of years. But she said she was also married. So she has a lot of marriages in her past. Also married to the prophet warrior who was very important in LDS called Moroni, right? I think Moroni was like, I think a prophet and an angel or something like that who appeared to Joseph Smith and had something to do with tablets, if I remember. I don't know a whole lot about the traditions of LDS, but I know Joseph Smith is very, very important, and he interacted with Moroni, and then there was a book or tablets or something. I don't know what it was. But
So like iPads?
No,
Those kind of tablets?
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
think they were golden tablets or something.
Oh,
They were
okay.
supposed to be something like
So
that.
gold-colored iPads. Is what, okay,
I suppose.
gotcha. I
But
understand.
you had to wear special glasses to read them. There are special glasses needed to read the tablets.
yeah, apparently I guess
Joseph Smith would sell to you for the right price.
That and Chad's
Sorry.
books.
Yeah, so now other reports said that Lori believed she was a reincarnation of Joseph Smith's wife. So again, she either was or inserted herself into LDS history in quite a few ways. Like she would be, if she was telling the truth, this would be like massive for LDS.
Pretty
Right?
big deal.
Their
Yeah.
tradition, yeah, this would be very significant.
And I imagine that if Joseph Smith was still alive, that he would see the kind of things that Lori and Chad believe and be like, wait, no, you're way, way off.
I disagree.
I did not say this.
I disagree. I think Joseph Smith would have been like, yeah, that's the thing.
Perhaps.
We can make some money off of this, right? But that's the thing. See, I think Joseph Smith was like, he admitted to lying about a lot of things, and he's kind of like, he's the founder of LDS, but Brigham Young was a much bigger force of influence on that, which is why it's Brigham Young University, not Joseph Smith University. During Joseph Smith's lifetime, he admitted in front of court that, like, yeah, I lied about stuff. Like I conned people. Like, he was an admitted con person both before and after.
Right, he had
Supposedly discovered.
He had a scam that he ran over and over where he would find things that you lost or try to using supernatural abilities, something like that, some type of just this ongoing con with different people. He was not someone who told the truth very often.
Yeah, he was not. And I think that many in the church recognize that he didn't tell the truth all that often, which is why Brigham Young was much more important because he was much more stalwart and true believer.
Yeah, and I think consistent. Right? Like Joseph Smith, I mean, he tried a few different things before he came up with the whole Moroni situation. Or, maybe it really happened. I don't know.
It's possible. I don't know.
It just seems difficult to believe considering, the twists and turns in that story. The LDS story is actually pretty incredible.
But I think if you're gonna accept that, hey, there are past lives and we might be able to tie into these past lives, it was a safer bet to go with Joseph Smith than to say, well, yeah, I'm the previous wife of Brigham Young. Like really? You want to go there? Nah. Joseph Smith? Okay, yeah, sure. It's a little bit easier,
More believable.
a little bit easier of a sell.
Yeah, so Lori, in these multiple positions, being the wife of Moroni or Joseph Smith or whoever, her job was to make sure that the people trying to get on board the Apocalypse rocket ship or what, I don't know how they get to wherever they're going, but she was the one who's like to check them in. Like she was to make sure, like, oh, did you buy Chad's book or whatever the qualifications were.
Here's your name tag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Make sure you wear your name tag. Put all of your names from all of your past lives on your name tag. It's why it's this long.
Past marriages and everything. Yeah.
Like a whole book.
We're going to put a T-shirt on, and on the back it just has all of your past marriages. Where you just fill that in.
She organized a group picture, I think, too, right? Of all the 144,000 group picture.
That's right. Great. Oh, you were blinking.
Take it again.
Damn it!
So she thought that everybody would live in the New Jerusalem after a great war. Presumably, the war was with these robot zombies, these demonic robot zombies that had wiped out souls and occupied the body.
Yeah.
So we see that This was reported in at least one place I saw. Chad gave Lori a to-do list. And
That never bodes well.
It had 7 items on it, and you can see the little wheels turning, like he's trying to make this work. Right, there's like smoke coming out of his ears, but those little gears they're turning. He had some attempts here to organize things. So here's what he said in this email: translate ancient records, write a book about the translation process. You would think that he had the order mixed up there a little bit, right? I would write the manual first.
Work out all the kinks and and then translate.
Figure out how to translate this.
Identify locations in Northeast Arizona for camps. Something about the presidency of the Church of Firstborn. I don't know if they need to elect a president, and I don't know what the Church of Firstborn is.
Well, that's the thing that
I think it was the church they were founding.
Or
trying to.
Whatever, yeah.
Maybe it was in the appendix of the translation process book. I don't know.
That's why you got to get the translation done first.
Help establish a food distribution as the tribulation starts. So, people are getting chased by the zombies. They get hungry. He understood that. He was like, without food,
important.
how are we going to fight these zombies?
That is important. Brains.
Do you remember the movie? There's a Zombie Land, which is a very underrated movie.
That is an underrated.
Where the spoiler alert for
There's zombies in it.
there's zombies. It's actually hysterical. The sequel, but the original, great. And the kid's like something about like he has these rules that he recites out of order through the whole thing, and one of them is cardio.
Cardio is very important if you're living in a zombie apocalypse. It really is.
That would be a good one for the movie part. That was so well done. I think they took all the jokes they didn't use in Zombieland and put them in the sequel.
Probably.
It was just
Might as well use them somewhere.
yeah. It was worth
Bill Murray
watching.
was in that movie. Bill Murray was in Zombieland. It was so great.
Yeah. It was so novel on a topic that's been covered in so many ways. So going down the list, item number 6: ordain individuals to translate as the camps begin. So you have the manual ready, hand them out. You're going to need this for the ancient translation.
That's why you write the book. You do the translation, then you write the book on the translation process so people can understand it, so that they can understand how to do the translations themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they can buy that book too.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you give a man a fish or teach him how to fish?
There you go. There you go.
Teach them how to translate, and then they can be translators.
And the last item: provide supplies to righteous members of families.
Not just the members, the righteous
The
members.
righteous members. Everybody else goes without.
You know what? I think at this point they should probably contact people that were involved in Bhagwan's, Rajneesh's group, right? Because they had the whole group thing down, right? They'd be able to distribute things pretty well, right? Like they distributed beer to the homeless people. They were pretty good at that. And poison or drugs, whatever it was, to those homeless people. So I think at this point, maybe if both camps kind of joined forces in some ways, it'd be a disaster, of course, but it'd be a pretty magnificent disaster.
Similar areas of the world, just a couple of decades off from one another.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot of people that believe in what he's doing.
It was the Sannyasins were trying to build their city in Oregon, which isn't far from Idaho.
Yeah, right.
Like right next door.
The climate's probably similar, I imagine.
I
would think.
I mean, I see some
depending on where.
similarities here. I think that they could join. They may have different beliefs, right? But I think this whole be in a camp, provide things to people, make a lot of money off of things that they probably shouldn't be making money off of. I think they've got similar ideologies going on.
Just got to open up that time bridge and let the sannyasins come over.
I'm sure there's people ready to go today that would be willing to jump right onto that.
Well,
Possibly.
you have demon robot zombies and Rolls Royces.
Yeah.
A winning
It's a
combination.
winner. I mean, you imagine the kind of accoutrements you could put onto a Rolls Royce to kill zombies with. Just weld on a bunch of spikes and stuff and just mow them down. But at the same time, you can find a way to bring them together, and it's like they could have a library that has Osho's books and Chad Daybell's books on it. I think they have about the same number.
I mean, what a library, right?
It would be a library.
The amount of information, just stuff that you're going to read about for the first time,
Every
in that
time.
library, every time in that library. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, cult mergers don't happen too often, but they're not a bad idea.
Wait, hostile or, or not? Is it a hostile
It's a
takeover?
We have the demon robot.
We're going to make a
zombies.
hostile takeover bid of the Sannyasins.
I don't know if it would be a bad video game idea either. You have the orange or whatever color the
Yeah.
bed,
Sannyasins, the
some type of
orange,
weird orangey
Reddish
red, like that
kinda.
crayon. Remember the 144 pack of Crayola crayons? Like, is this
The
what is this?
144,000 crayons?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Each crayon represents 1,000.
Brought to you by Chad and Lori.
Yeah, I mean, so you build a camp, like, so you can pick like factions. You can pick the sannyasins, and you're like building like aqueducts and whatever they did, and then you have the
Building everything.
Yeah.
They did Sim City out there in the middle.
they're like the Terran. If you're familiar with StarCraft, right? They're like the Terran, and then Chad can be like the Zerg. Like you got a lot of little guys going on, a lot of aliens or whatever the Zerg were, like a
They're
biological.
not really well organized.
Right. Yeah.
Because you only got 7 rules to go by.
What cult would be the Protoss? The psionic race that was into technology. Has there ever been a cult that adopted technology?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
Maybe Marshall Applewhite, the Heaven's Gate with the sneakers.
Oh, yeah,
They fixed computers for a living.
Yeah, that's
He
true.
could be the Protoss.
Unfortunately, they lost the whole thing. They're pretty much gone.
Yeah. Well, the website, the Heaven's Gate website was up. I'm not sure if it's still up, but it was up for many years after they supposedly journeyed to the spaceship. Because not all of them made the journey. Some were like, I'll stay behind and see how this works out for you. Somebody's got to keep this website up, man. Like,
Somebody's got to keep it up.
but the Marshall Applewhite, a case known by the big eyes, right? The picture of him with the he had the cult leader stare down.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes,
Number one cult leader stare ever. No one can compete with Marshall.
The Scientologists.
Yeah, they're pretty good at it. They're pretty good at it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones who embrace the technology.
Oh, right.
They have their machines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what they call them. You grip and
Yeah, it would tell you something, right? I don't know what it's
supposed to tell you you're psychic. So they hate psychology. By the way, they would absolutely hate us regardless of whether we say anything about them or not, because Scientology is a completely anti-psychology.
Yeah, that would be a good topic for alien lizard humanoids. There's been so much coming out about like Hollywood people. I think David Duchovny recently said that they approached him and he's like, you know what, you keep your whatever you got going on. And of course, there was the famous interview with Tom Cruise where, that was just. I like Tom Cruise as an actor.
We've mentioned that several times before.
But I don't get what was going on with that. Like that was very odd.
Was that the one with Oprah? Was it that interview?
No, that was the Katie Holmes interview.
He jumped on the couch.
When he jumped on the couch.
Oh,
and everything.
okay,
That was the Oprah interview. Was the Kate? I'm in love with Katie Holmes, jumping up and down on that. The other interview was a Scientology interview where he just was doing the whole thing. It's like,
It was like I think it was actually filmed for them. It got leaked, and if I'm not mistaken, like it was I guess a new recruit was supposed to watch it or something like that. But he also, I think Tom Cruise talked about it other times, but he really invested in that, and I think maybe still is.
Yeah. I think he still is.
Yeah.
So I assume that this is the website heavensgate.com.
Is it still up?
Still up, yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, I remember looking at this before too, and it was just, it felt too easy for it just to be heavensgate.com, right? Like somebody had spoofed it or knocked it off or something. It just felt too easy, but it's still up.
It was early 90s when it was put up, so there weren't all of the domain names were not taken at that point.
Yeah. Oh, it looks early 90s. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it's retro.
Yeah.
It's because nobody's really updated. they kept it running, but they didn't update it since then.
Well, he ascended to the spaceship, so
Yeah.
it's just supposed to. I just deliver a message to everyone else. I don't know what everyone else is supposed to do if the spaceship's gone. Does it make a return trip or?
I don't know. Maybe in 144,000 years.
Yeah. So we see that. So Chad and Lori had vigorous adventures before being born in other lives. And you think, okay, 7 times together, well, that's not the total of the story. Chad had 31 different lives on various Earth-like planets. And Lori had 21.
Yeah. 52 lives between them.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it is. That's a deck of cards right there.
Yeah, so this brings us to kind of what was going on, right? So these guys, I don't know. Again, just speculation, who knows? I don't even know if they're guilty. And this all could have been Lori's brother wiping everybody out.
Yeah.
Trying to frame them or trying to help them without them really.
He could have thought of himself as their guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
He was their Sam Beckett.
Moroni. Yeah,
Sam Beckett. Their Sam Beckett, trying to put right what once went wrong. He's just their guardian angel over watching everything.
I think Lori did say at some point that Alex was her guardian or something along those lines. She kind of identified him as somebody who really cared about her and would do anything for her, if I remember correctly.
How many more people do I have to kill, Al? Just one more, Sam. You can leap out of here. Okay.
Yeah. So, what's going on? Like, is it the delusions at work? Is this just a cover for what they wanted to do? Like, they want to be criminals, so allegedly criminals. So they're just like, let's just make up stuff that no one will think we're saying if we say these things about the demonic robot zombies. Was it a delusion of misidentification? Where is that what happened with her children, where she was seeing them basically as imposters?
Right. That's actually an interesting thing that I actually did a little bit of research on. That phenomenon is actually called Capgras syndrome. Mm-hmm. It's actually spelled Capgras.
Yep.
Capgras syndrome, and it comes usually it's a neurological condition wherein a person is incapable of recognizing people that they recognize. Right? It's been in medical dramas like House all the time. Like I'm looking at you, I recognize your face, I know who you are. I look away, I come back. You're not the person. I recognize your face. You're not the same person. You're a different person entirely, and that's. Like, if that's what's happening, if that kind of thing happened with Lori, because she's saying, like, you're a zombie. You're not Charles. You're Nate Schneider. Like, whatever. Anybody she looked at who she recognized and then suddenly she couldn't recognize, there was something different about them. Something in them is gone. Something in them is off. Then that delusion, that neurologically based delusion becomes very powerful in her life. Mm-hmm. And I think it was interesting when they lived in Hawaii. She and Charles lived in Hawaii for a while. It was shortly before they moved back to Arizona that her beliefs started to change. And it was right after they moved back that her behaviors really started to change. Now, there are all sorts of tropical insects that carry all sorts of various diseases. And I know that in 2015 or 2017, there was an outbreak of a rat lungworm, which actually is a parasite that can get into the human brain and cause brain lesions, which is the lesions are really, Capgras syndrome is very heavily related to brain lesions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is grandiosity, such as viewing yourself as a deity with 21 previous lives, and paranoia, believing the end of days is coming, or there are people out to get me, trying to hurt me, things like that.
Demonic zombies.
Robot zombies. Robot demonic zombies. So it's possible that she contracted some sort of parasitic disease that slowly has been damaging her brain to the point where all of these things are happening. And the question I pose, because it's really one I struggle with, is if she has this brain disorder, if she had and it's correctable, she can take medications and things could be corrected. And it's causing these changes of behaviors. It did cause her to tell Alex, "No, that's not Tylee, that's not JJ, get rid of them, kill them," and he did. Is she still responsible for that? If it was a physiological change in her brain and brain chemistry that is then correctable to bring her back to a more stable sense of self, is she as responsible for that as if she didn't have it? Arguably, if she didn't have it, she's absolutely responsible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it gets into it's an area we've talked about before with, what do we do if there was an explanation like a vascular disease or an infection or something, or schizophrenia, or delusional disorder, or brief psychotic disorder, or major mood disorder. I mean, she allegedly killed people. So is it really just the difference between prison and a mental hospital or some other hospital? Mm-hmm. Or can somebody be restored and we're just like, well, you were insane temporarily and now you're not? I think society, we talked about that, I think it was a while ago, we talked about how I think society is just fed up with what they view as excuses. I think we look at it a certain way as mental health professionals, like, okay, the guilt is mitigated, right, by certain factors. But murders are so offensive, especially of children. I think society's like, I don't care. Mm-hmm. You incarcerate them and you want to call it a mental hospital, you want to call it a prison, do whatever you want to do.
They want justice.
Yeah. So I think it becomes increasingly academic to try to parse out the guilt, which I think is kind of sad. Because I think there would be a defense there. Like if it really was...
If this is an encephalopathic issue, that there's literally problems in the brain, and then we can put on antiparasitic medications and then some steroids or something, and that damage can be healed and reversed. That's different from if it's schizophrenia. Schizophrenia can't be reversed. Mm-hmm. Personality disorders can't be reversed, but something like that, brief psychotic disorder, could potentially be similar to an encephalopathic episode, right? Where it can be just temporary, and come back and never come back ever again. And in a case of something like a parasite, once that's cured, once that's gone, like the realization of reality might set in, and you go, oh my.
Yeah, function can be restored.
Function not only is function restored, but it's, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah. So imagine, like, to those who may be like, look, they all should go in prison or whatever. I can appreciate that argument, the call for justice. But what if there was a situation where somebody was drugged against their will and handed a weapon, even if it's just a button they press that blows something up, a bomb? Well, they're guilty of murder, but they had a pretty good explanation.
Yeah. And in legal sense, that would be coercion.
Right.
Coercion or coercion by force or use of a mind-altering substance. There are already defenses for that, right? If the person is given heroin or mushrooms beyond their, without them knowing, mm-hmm. and then they're like, "Here, push this button." Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, or they drive a car and kill someone. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty impressive mitigation or absolution, really. And I think most people would be like, that's fine, because there was a person who endangered them that we can blame, right? There's nobody to blame if it's an infection or something, right? Yeah, but it's still might not be your fault.
Right. In both cases, it wasn't necessarily the person's choice to have done what they potentially mm-hmm. did. So that brings up the point you're making, of course, of are they liable, or is this something that they have a defense? Like they can't claim that they actually did it or that they even knew what they were doing at the time. So it's an interesting thing that I think everyone grapples with at some point.
And I think that would be mitigating for Lori, not for Chad. But I think that her delusions may have influenced his. Like even if we say that he's not delusional, but he was starting to go down a road of his own self-beliefs, and then she just comes in, brain issues going on, just propping up everything he says, and his stuff just escalates.
Yeah, I think he might have been the fire, and she was the gasoline. Because he wasn't on a trajectory of homicide, as far as we can tell. He was bizarre and odd, and had maybe magical thinking, and he was into conspiracy theories. He was definitely a strange guy based on the reports that are out there. But that's
aren't we all, though?
Yeah, I mean, that's far from being criminal. But then it does seem like he really went downhill as far as people dying around him when Lori jumped in.
They were dropping like flies.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see what happens with the Tammy Daybell autopsy stuff, if they're actually going to bring charges in that, and if that has any bearing on their belief of what happened with Alex Cox. I mean, it was determined to be, at the time, natural causes, and unfortunately his body was cremated, so there's no way to go back and do an autopsy to determine if maybe he had something put into his system too.
Yeah. Toxicology report would have been nice to do before cremating.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of like a conviction, I mean, the state's playing it pretty cool with the evidence right now. I think they have enough, but because I don't think they would move forward if they didn't.
Right.
But again, we see many cases where prosecutors are like, why not? Let's just give it a chance. Take a chance, see if we get a conviction, when they really don't know.
Sometimes they get a conviction for somebody for 25 years who didn't do it, and other times they stumble into, they're guilty. We don't have the actual evidence for it, but they're guilty.
Yeah, it's just a reinforcement of the fantasy that they start out with. So, I don't know. I mean, this is one where I'd be very curious to see how the trial plays out and what they're going to have to bring their evidence in for trial. There's no more hiding it when they're on trial for murder.
Yeah. Even when they release things, they released, I forget, maybe hundreds of pages of emails and documents and everything. A lot of it was highly redacted. Mm-hmm. And so, they kind of caved to the pressure that people wanted to see some of the things they had, but still they're keeping some of it close and not actually releasing a lot of the stuff that they actually had, even though it's out there. You can't read most of it. So you're right. And there's not a lot of cases we cover that are current, right? Ones where we're actually waiting on things to happen, especially this early on in the case where we don't even know a lot of details at all. There's so much information, right, that we know about the people involved and everything, but we don't actually know what they have in terms of evidence or what they are going to bring to trial and really even what the defense is going to bring to trial either, because Lori and Chad have not said anything publicly about the case. They've not said anything other than they're saying that they're innocent.
Which is a little weird, right? You would think if they'd really done it based on some type of delusion, that delusion would persist when they're incarcerated.
Right.
Like, why are they being so careful? And they are on the recorded calls. They're careful.
I wonder if it's just
all the dark spirits. Everybody else, there's dark spirits. We got to fight them. So just keep your mouth shut.
Stay away from the dark spirits. I wonder if they're both just so used to having lawyers involved, so many marriages and therefore so many divorces. And I imagine that Chad, with all his books and speaking engagements and everything, I wonder if he was involved with lawyers before too. Just in a professional type capacity or something. I don't know. So maybe they're just so used to lawyers that they realize, I need to keep my mouth shut because anything I say in any capacity is going to be bad. So I just need to keep it shut. And maybe lawyers have kind of impressed that on them over the years or something.
I think that is the number one piece of advice. I think that's like the first thing that we as counselors are taught when we're getting ready to go out and practice is don't sleep with your clients. The first things you told us in supervision. I think the first thing that they tell lawyers isn't don't sleep with your clients, because that happens all the time. I think it's tell your clients to shut up. Like the first piece of advice that every lawyer gives to their client is don't say anything to anybody, right? Whether it's criminal or civil. It's like, don't say anything to anybody. Keep your mouth shut. Come through me, and I'll decide what we can disclose to who.
Yeah, so they, maybe the paranoia too. Like they're used to, like maybe they've talked and said we got to keep this secret as we go fight these zombies, and they've just stuck with that mentality.
Yeah,
I'm surprised there hasn't been like a jailhouse informant, the most unreliable witnesses on the planet. I know there was the one sort of. Right, the one we talked about, but one that comes for something more definitive, like they confessed to the murders or something. Because usually there's several of them in these high-profile cases. I think somebody incarcerated, I don't know if they can really choose, but it'd be nice to be in a cell alone just to prevent that. Because I've seen some cases where clearly the informants were lying, where they didn't even get the details of the confession right. Like it was impossible for the crime to have been committed the way the informant described. There was a famous case in, I think it was in Australia, where that was the case. There was an informant. It was a murky murder. Again, a guy killing his family. Seems to be a popular thing we've talked about. It was a wife and daughter. And there was a jailhouse informant who was talking about an appeal that hadn't even been filed. And he had a huge, extensive history of lying to the police. So I guess the way they catalog crimes is like if they involve deception or not. And he had something like 20 crimes that involved deception. And prosecutors, the Crown, had said, oh, you know, this guy's horrible. Like on many occasions, they convicted him. He's a horrible liar. Don't believe anything he says. But then when they were trying the other guy, they're like, he always tells the truth. Well, what? How did we get? Is this the Crown that I knew? The prosecution in New Zealand and other countries is called the Crown, like Australia and Britain. Yeah, so we see just a lot of opportunities for somebody to come forward and incriminate them, but it hasn't happened. Yeah. It's very odd. I would expect a confession of some type, or at least some deception by now.
Jeff, when you were talking about the jailhouse roommate or the cellmate, and talking about how their phone calls are sickening, that reminded me of a different case. I cannot remember the name of the guy, but he wanted to be a spy, and he ended up shooting someone, just a random person, through the window of his car. Like he pulled up next to him and just started shooting, just to kill somebody, just because he wanted to do the spy thing, and then drove away. But he and his girlfriend, she didn't know anything about it, but she would call him while he was in prison, and they would just have these conversations. And I saw there's a 2020 or 48 hours on it, and they played some of the recorded phone calls, because you're in prison, your phone calls are recorded. Just spoiler alert, right? And it's just like, it's just like, what am I listening to?
It sounded like some Muppets.
It did. It sounded like Muppets, and it's just like, oh my goodness gracious! Like it was crazy how just out of proportion cartoonish this was. And it was what reminded me of that. I was like, wow, if it's anything like that, like it's really out there.
I imagine that's how Beaker how he would speak to someone he loved, and get all lovey mushy like that.
I always like the chef too.
Swedish chef. I love the Muppets.
There was a Muppet show. I think it came out. I think it was on ABC. It was like 2015 or 2016, and only had like 10 episodes. And it was in the same style as The Office, right? So it was kind of like the see people go out and have the like one-on-one interviews with the camera, and they kind of made fun of that style and things. I thought it was a great show. Now, it was nothing like the original Muppet show.
I think it was just called Muppets.
Yeah. And I thought it was great. It was nothing like the original Muppet show, which to people that grew up with that, I understand. It's going to be different. You're not going to like it. I get it. But I thought it was great. Like, it was really funny. They had a lot of like these recurring bits in there. They had all the good characters. And my favorite person in there was Chet. I think it was Chet, the IT guy, or Chip the IT guy, and just this super awkward character, right? And he would kind of show up weird places and kind of always be in the background, and it'd be like, Chip, where'd you come from? And he would do weird things, like he would people would be making fun of him, and then he would end up in the room alone, and he'd be like, people are making fun of me. I have friends. People know about me. And I thought he was one of the best characters of anything I was watching at the time. But then they canceled it because apparently people didn't like it. But I loved it.
They have a new Muppets show on Disney Plus now. I don't know if you've seen any of that. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Muppets Tonight, early 2000s. That was a great attempt to revive the Muppets.
They're coming out with a Halloween special, I think, too, if I heard correctly. Yeah.
The Muppets.
Yeah. Muppets was a great show. I didn't see that one, but the original.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Muppet Show.
Yeah, the Muppet Show. Yeah.
So many classic episodes of the Muppet Show. So many.
Yeah, really underrated. There was actually some Muppet movies, right? Muppets Take Manhattan.
A lot of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there was the Muppet movie.
Yeah,
Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yeah.
Goes to
Bunch of them.
went to space. There's the pirates, and then there's two more recent ones. The Muppet movie. I forget what the
Muppet Treasure Island, I think, was the pirate one.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
And
And then there was the Muppets, and then there was Muppets Most Wanted more recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some modern takes on it as well.
So
You heard it here. You heard it here, Muppets.
So moving to the last theory here, and we talked about this before in other videos, folie à deux, right? Shared psychotic disorder. And what I find interesting in this case is you try to conceptualize this. All right, let me see if I can fit the evidence to some sort of model with folie à deux. Usually there's not a competition for who's the primary partner. Right? Usually you can figure that out. Like, oh, this guy had schizophrenia for like 20 years, and then his sister moved back in or whatever, and oh, look, they're folie à deux. You know, she was the secondary partner. You know, it was transmitted. Both these seem like potential candidates for primary.
Yeah.
They both had a history of odd beliefs, although Chad seems longer. He's older. Yeah, but seems like maybe it's a little more like part of his life, his community of self-published book buyers. You know, so I don't know. Again, though, if it was folie à deux, whoever the primary partner was, you would expect to be psychotic in jail, not careful, and not say anything.
Yeah.
And again, the part of the psychosis could be based on the paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
And the paranoia being like, everyone out there is a dark spirit. I can't say anything to any of them. I have to only talk to the light spirits. And we have to talk in code and be careful because they're listening.
Maybe that'll be the jailhouse person, somebody that Lori finds or Chad finds that they deem a light spirit, and like, we finally found someone we can communicate. Finally, you know, and then that person is
That's an
telling
idea
others.
for an informant. I don't like jailhouse informants, but if I did, that would be the idea.
The undercover informant. You just have somebody go in.
They go into the cell with Lori and they're like, you know, this is going to sound a little weird, but I was married in many lives before. I lived on Earth-like planets. I mean, look, we don't have to talk about this.
You don't have to believe me. I know. I get it. I get how weird it sounds.
Hey, weren't we married once before in a previous life?
That's a good opening line. You know, walk into a jail. Hey, you know, new cellmate. Wait a minute. We were married before, weren't we? That's a good way to start
Weren't
it.
we married on Earth 72?
No, that's a good point though. Maybe they can send someone in a big sign that says "Light Spirit" or "I was married in previous lives," or
A button.
Or, yeah, a pin or something.
It's like, this is my 23rd life. Ask me about 22 others.
Yeah, so the prosecutors aren't thinking about how to really investigate this case. We might have just broken this wide open. Send an informant in. They got to be casual, right? Because if you really think there's robot demon zombies out there, you're not going to just be talking to anybody.
Right.
No.
You can't take that
Got to be
chance.
subtle. Maybe do some drawings. Oh, don't look. It's an angel with tablets. Don't look at it. And then kind of ease into it and maybe get some conversations going.
What are the odds that we're going to be called in as consultants at this point?
I don't know. It'd be interesting. It would be interesting. And I think that when it comes to the folie à deux, if that's the case, here is a perfect storm of folie à deux. You have both people who had just out of the box, almost burgeoning on delusional ideas to begin with, and it fed into each other.
Right.
Until it's full-on psychosis in both sides.
Both escalated, right? So there's something else weird if this is shared psychotic disorder, which of course it may not be. I mean, it's just throwing out different theories. But if it was shared psychotic disorder, when the person who has kind of the disorder that leads to psychosis, normally like schizophrenia, is separated from the person who didn't, the person who just has the folie à deux, because technically they're the only ones who really get it, right? They usually recover. Now, they're not in the same jail cell, although they're still communicating, which might be keeping the transmission alive.
Yeah.
But you would think one of them would be like, what am I doing here? You know, like they kind of snap out of it. There was a case, I can't remember their first names, something like Sabrina and Ursula, I think. There's twin sisters. Their last name was Erickson. Really famous, alleged folie à deux, like suspected folie à deux, but we don't know for sure. It was made famous because there was a version of whatever country it happened. I think it was in Britain. There was a version of Cops or something that was filming at the time the incident happened with these two. Like it was, you know how they run out the cameras and they're like, oh, you know, you're going to pull over this guy or whatever, right? So the camera people were standing on the side of the road, and I don't remember all the details of it. I covered it a while ago. And Sabrina and Ursula, I think it was like one of the major highways, like the M6 or something like that in Britain. They ran across the highway right as the guy was recording. The video is like unbelievable. And one gets hit by a car, like you see the whole thing. Another one runs into the side of a tractor trailer, like just runs into it. And then they were treating them. I don't remember it exactly, but they were treating them like they're like, oh no, like shut down the highway. Like these people just ran on the highway, and one takes off again. And I think got hit again, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember the sequence, but it was really like potentially lethal behavior. They got hospitalized, one was released, and then she tried to kill somebody with a knife or something, I think. And so she was hospitalized again. I think she jumped off of a bridge. So she committed homicide or attempted murder, I don't remember, and then jumped off of an overpass. And last report I saw was they were doing okay, reintegrated into society. I mean, clearly something was wrong. Like,
Yeah,
usually
I would say so.
Yeah.
It's just my personal opinion, not my professional one, but it seems something was wrong.
Seems like something was wrong, yeah. So, for them to snap back, I don't know if they fully snap back, but they were twins. They were identical twins. For them to kind of be normal again, I think gives a lot of hope to people that, again, if they had shared psychotic disorder, gives a lot of hope that the people could recover from that. And, you have to wonder with all this time with Lori and Chad being separated, one's not recovering, that works against the folie à deux theory. One should be getting better. Yeah. Probably fairly substantially by now, because it's been some time. They've been, since Hawaii, right? They've been in custody.
Yeah.
Well,
Lori's been in custody since Hawaii.
Yeah. Right. Chad was arrested later
Chad
on.
was arrested later,
Yeah.
so that they got Lori got arrested February 25th, 2020, and Chad, they searched his house June 9th, 2020. I think that was the same day that he got arrested.
Yeah, because when they started pulling stuff out of the ground, he got in his truck and tried to leave.
Right?
And they're like, oh, no, you don't.
Made a mile and a half, I think, or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah. So who knows what's going on? I hope that I don't know if this trial will be like broadcast or not. I don't think there's any discussion of that.
I don't know.
They've broadcast a lot of stuff so far in terms of court-related things.
Yeah, there'll definitely be sketches and people were like tweeting outside the courtroom, but I don't know if they'll allow the cameras in. And
It is a pretty small courtroom, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
And before we close out for this, I would like to introduce our new accoutrements on
Oh,
our
yeah.
table.
What do we got?
We've got a couple of things since the last time. And one over here, this is a syringe. It came out way bigger than I thought it was going to. Like I thought it was going to be like kind of this tall. It's humongous. But the syringe is in honor of our video on our first alien lizard humanoids video on Bhagwan Rajneesh, because syringe was a very important part of that case.
Yep.
Key part.
Yep.
And over on this desk, over on Dr. Grande's desk over here, we have a skin cream jar in honor of Betty Broderick, our very first murder part, because of the connection to skin cream, the letters and skin cream brochures and coupons that were allegedly sent to Betty by her husband and his wife.
Very suggestive, kind of,
You're getting old.
Right.
Yeah, they're theoretically induced a homicide. Yeah.
So that's our two new items. I think I'll be introducing the new items as we end each episode when I bring one in. This one, of course, is for Jeff Pelly. And we got this one here. I don't think I've introduced this one either. This is our novelty nose and glasses from the Betty and Barney Hill episode.
Yeah.
We talked about the aliens, which are typically seen having flat, noseless faces, described by Betty and Barney as having large, bulbous noses. So we just assumed that they were wearing these kind of novelty glasses.
We should reiterate that Mike makes all of these, 3D prints them, paints all of them. So very, very impressive, Mike.
Yeah, except for the yarn and the markers. I didn't 3D print the yarn.
You could have gotten
or
away
the
with
I
it.
think somebody asked about the yarn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's just because we use the yarn back there.
The yarn is for that.
Mike is also knitting underneath the table.
I mean, it is something to do to keep my hands busy. So then I have something,
A few podcasts, you have a sweater.
Yeah.
Look, I'm done.
Yeah, Jeff will have a red sweater next time.
And that means I'm going to die, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, because of the Star Trek, right?
It's
'cause
the Star Trek thing, yeah.
yeah.
Which now that I have that reference, I'm going to use it every single time. I've never seen any of the episodes.
Good.
But
That's
you know,
fine.
yeah.
But in the Picard ones, right? In Generation, he would be like
Yellow shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be yellow.
We'll get yellow yarn then.
So yes, let's move to final thoughts. Then we'll start with you, Jeff. Any final thoughts on Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell?
Well, it's it's obviously horrific when anybody is murdered, let alone kids, let alone in a way that was very intentional, right? Being burned. I think there was dismemberment going on, if I remember correctly. But either way, they were. It was terrible. You know, it wasn't just hey, you're dead, but there was other stuff associated with it. So we can't, of course, understate how horrible that is to have to hear about this, for the family members to have to go through this experience of not only initially not knowing where their family, where those kids are, whether grandchildren or niece, nephew, cousins, whatever, friends of theirs, of course, too, to not know where they're at to begin with, but then to find out that they were killed, right? Taken from the world, taken from their friends and family. Can't understate that. And I don't think we can I think we can also not understate how there's people out there who do that, right? It's obviously somebody did this. We don't know who, of course, but there's people out in the world who their mindset is such that they just do that. And it's horrifying, of course. And people have commented that we're joking throughout this, right? And so, of course, that doesn't take away from the horrific nature of everything that we talk about. But I guess it's just the way that we talk about things. So it's horrific, and it's really tough to talk about too. Knowing that these kids are dead, and they died in such a horrible way, just right on top of that. So when I was hearing about this kind of 2019 as it was happening and throughout since then, initially it seemed kind of cut and dry. Like, here are Chad and Lori, and there's two kids found buried on the property, and okay, well, that seems to connect. But then all of the players start coming in with Alex, with the murders of past ex-husbands, ex-wives, or, well, the deaths of them, maybe not murders. But all these details that were at the very least suspicious. And it started to really put a new spin on everything. Wait a minute, maybe there's more to it than any of us realize at this point. Maybe it goes much deeper. And, we just spent this whole time talking about how deep it really is, all the players involved in this. So it'll be interesting how this unfolds, of course. And unfortunately, it might just not be an open and close kind of thing. There's probably going to be a lot of back and forth, and a very lengthy trial at that, with all the people involved, and potentially with all of the information, all of the information, all the things we learned from cell phone data and getting a location off of it, and emails and statements that they've made to each other, text messages and all that. So I think we're far from seeing the end of this, unfortunately, but hopefully justice is served, right? And hopefully the family is able to get some kind of closure. They'll never get the kids back, of course, but hopefully some kind of closure at the very least.
Yeah, you can be pretty sure that all the bizarre statements and things will be part of the evidence that the jury's going to hear, if the trial proceeds, which I think it will. And, I think that's probably going to be a pretty strong factor that influences them to hear about, like, the 144,000, the deity and the robot demon zombies. And, it's hard to imagine that's not going to have some fairly profound impact. And then I think, in terms of, like, the bizarre thinking, I think this case is odd because you had two bizarre thinkers come together. So it's not benign. Like, if you hear somebody kind of talking about these different things, it's not necessarily benign, especially if they can get on the same wavelength. Maybe it's just here, a confluence of, a very bad confluence of circumstances.
Right.
What are your thoughts, Mike?
This case was just, it is that perfect storm. And it's interesting that it's continuing, like, as we're speaking. Actually, I think the 48 Hours episode is over by now, but like the fact that there's new stuff coming out. This is kind of the on the edge. I think the only one that, like, we've covered another couple of cases like this, but like Matthew Coleman is still, like, we're way away from this point with Matthew Coleman. Like, we know way more about this case and the timeline. So many people involved in just understanding what happened, and it's so confusing. Just with all of these different people and everything coming in, I in preparation for this, like, I did the reading and everything, but I watched the 2020, like, couple of different 2020 episodes of, I think there was a 48 Hours that another 48 Hours that covered it, and on Investigation Discovery had a 3-part series called Doomsday, with the Discovery of the Missing Children or something like that. That was really, really well done, but it followed Kay and her husband. That was Charles Vallow's sister and her husband, the grandparents of JJ, and they were really the driving force behind this investigation and trying to get those kids back. Because if they hadn't tried to push to find JJ, it might not even have gone to the courts to have that court order to show up, bring them up. If they hadn't pushed that, the courts might not have done that, and then they might not have ever been found.
There would never have been the desertion charge.
There wouldn't have been the desertion charge. It wouldn't have been found. So that 3-episode thing was very, very interesting. We didn't even get to talk about the storage locker thing. That was a big thing. All sorts of stuff. Just like there's a lot of things that point in directions. But again, Alex Cox is at the center of it. Like, Lori's brother seems to be at the center of it, and I think that if there's any defense, it's gonna be that. I think Chad's defense is gonna be that hey, it was Alex. I think Lori might want to protect her brother, even though he's dead. She might be like, no, it wasn't him. Like, I doubt either one of them will try and go with an insanity defense, even though I think Lori could probably get away with it.
Well, I think they
with that defense.
both make some type of case, yeah. But again, it might not matter. I don't know how Idaho works with, like, sometimes even if you're successful, it doesn't work. Like, you still go to prison, right? Like, say, oh, okay, you're guilty, but you had a reason. All right, welcome to prison. Like, same outcome. I
do not know. It's a pretty big, small state, right? Like, it's a huge land area, but it's a lot of rural, places, small towns. It just, I don't know how their justice system works, particularly on the state level. So I don't know what's going to go on with that. But this particular case is just so out there with what their beliefs are. It's almost worthy of an alien lizard humanoids based on those beliefs.
Yeah.
If it weren't for the clearly this is a murder case, then I would have voted for that, like, if nothing else. But it is an out there case, and I do want to find out what happens more with this. I want to see what happens, but at this point, they're not going to move forward yet because Lori is still not fit to stand trial, and she and Chad are tied together. So it's Chad's benefit, sort of, to keep that at this point because.
Yeah, well, I mean, he has a speedy trial defense at some point, but I guess more likely it would be separated.
Yeah,
right, because he's going to get tried. Like, they're not going to let him get away just because Lori's found not fit to stand trial. And again, I'm pretty sure she's going to be found.
Yeah. At some point, she will be.
Yeah.
And we'll watch it. I'm sure that there'll be TV shows about it, no matter what. Like, the news will be there, whether they're allowed in the courtroom or not. There's going to be stuff about it. As far as the media goes, it's almost up there with Scott Peterson, with as much coverage as this case has.
Yeah, it is just such a complex case that, again, like we talked about earlier, it has everything. No matter what you like about true crime, you're going to find it in this case. Like, even if it's only one thing, it's in there.
Yeah.
It's incredibly complex. I was thinking of the movie Spaceballs. There was a scene at the end where Rick Moranis was Dark Helmet, I think.
Dark Helmet.
Spoiler alert for Spaceballs.
I haven't seen Spaceballs.
I've seen this one. By the way.
It's great. It's great. It's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah, who was the character's name who was like Luke Skywalker?
Lone Star.
Lone Star.
Lone Star.
Right. So Lone Star confronts Dark Helmet at the end, where they have these rings.
The Schwartz.
The Schwartz, right? Instead of a saber, it's the Schwartz. And we see that the reference was made to Star Wars, where Star Wars had some unusual or somewhat surprising relationships that emerged through the whole, as you move through like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, especially in the end of Return of the Jedi. And Dark Helmet says something like, I forget the whole line, but it was something like how they were related.
Your father's brother's nephew's former roommate.
He's like, what does that make us?
Nothing.
That's kind of like, when I try to untangle this case, that's the line I think of from Spaceballs. Like, like, do we get anywhere by looking at this? Like, what are these people doing? But yeah, you could make a number of movies about this case.
Yeah.
Like, good movies that I would watch. And I hope they do.
At some point, they probably will.
Yeah.
It might be Lifetime, but a movie will be made. If there hasn't been one already.
Right, they're
I'm
quick.
not 100% sure that Lifetime hasn't already made a movie about this.
Their production cycle's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think right when we did the Gerhard Schrader case, I mentioned there was a Lifetime movie, about who is Clark Rockefeller, like that came out like 2 months before he was arrested for murder. And I'm like, if you had just waited, you'd have gotten a bigger movie.
Yeah, well, we talked about it's tempting for producers like that to jump in to grab the audience, but then you risk an update.
Yeah.
But someplace like 48 Hours, I mean, they review the same cases like 100 times.
Yeah.
So I was watching an older case the other day. I think it was on his third time or something. They covered it. They're like, back in 1876 when we first covered this, like, what? How long you guys been working on this case? And the funny part of 48 Hours is you'll see like the correspondent, and then when they flash back, he looks a lot, or she looks a lot younger. Like, wow, it really has been like 20 years they've been doing this or whatever. It's been a long time.
There've been a couple of them, like especially with the death row cases and stuff. They're like, we first started covering this in 1999, and they'll flash back to that episode, and they'll show it. So it's like, wow, you have changed. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad change, but it's definitely a change. You can see where 22 years, does.
Well, and that speaks to how long these things take, like to get court hearings and appeals and everything.
Especially appeals.
And just, you get into 25 years, like it's nothing, because it just, everything takes so long. Every single step, getting everything ready for every single step. Before you know it, you're 25 years later and you're like, oh, finally I'm out of prison. Great. Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when I was watching the case of David Cam, the guy who was tried 3 times. In the movies and TV, it's always like, oh, I've been falsely arrested. Oh, they caught the real guy. Now I'm free. It doesn't work that way at all. You could stay in for 10, 20 years.
Even after they've caught the right guy.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're not concerned about justice.
I want to get my client out of prison. So?
Get in line.
Yes, it can take a long, long time. And it's just a brutal process. So I think it kind of stresses the upfront, like your interactions with law enforcement in the first 48 hours. right? Don't say anything
don't
then
talk.
or ever.
Don't talk without a lawyer, ever. Like, always get a lawyer. The problem there, though, is a lot of police and investigators are like, why do you need a lawyer if you're not guilty? You must be guilty.
Why didn't you show us what was in the bag instead of refusing to show us, or whatever else? Well, because I don't have to.
What's in the box?
Yeah.
What's in the box? 7.
Yeah.
The great movie.
That was another good movie for the movie part.
Yeah.
Because it was clever.
That was an amazing movie.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah. That was one of those ones where when you're first watching it, you're like, spoiler alert for something. You're like, this isn't going to be so good. And then you're like, wait a second. This is actually pretty intelligent. And then when it gets to the end, you're like, oh my goodness, like, what, these guys,
Holy crap.
they really wrote this well. Kind of like The Sixth Sense, a little bit, like in terms of, in the end, it was ultimately clever. Even though it may not have appeared to be special in the way. So, all right. So, yeah, that's Lori Vallow. I think this is a case that at some point we will have to update. I don't know if it'll be a full show, or we'll do like an update show, or we'll throw in like Matthew Taylor Coleman.
We might be older, noticeably older, by the time they get done with this stuff.
Well,
It's like my beard will be down on the floor.
You'll have a whole mountain of 3D printed stuff. You'll have to look over.
It's like we'll be like, over here.
tunnel. Yeah, who knows? Who knows how many years it'll take for them to get through court and what will happen. So that is tonight's episode of the murder part. And we'll have to go take a look and see what we missed on 48 Hours. And I don't think it'll change anything substantially for this episode, but who knows? It might have been a bombshell in there. But that's what we have as of today. Thank you so much for watching. Please put any thoughts about this case or ideas for other cases in the comments. We read every single comment
We do.
on there. So we, again, appreciate you watching, and we will talk to you soon.